time for another week in review. First off, I want to mention that someone had asked me to make a video on how exactly you are, like, how do you read panels in graphic novels and comics. And yes, I do intend on making this video sometime in the future, but I've been quite busy, and I know that it is going to take quite a bit of effort on my part because I have to find different examples and film them and kind of like a tutorial kind of thing. So it's going to take a little bit of time, but I do plan on doing that. So I want to throw that out there before this. Well, anyways, I'm going to get into this week in review. A lot of these books are going to be Sandman books because I did want to read the Sandman books, that whole series. So yeah, a lot of books in this are going to be that. But first up, we have The New Deal by Jonathan Case. This cover is beautiful. I do have to say that for all the people who judge graphic novels just on the art alone. This is a newer graphic novel. It's Dark Horse published, but this takes place just at the end of the Depression era at the Waldorf Astoria in New York City. So it kind of involves, you know, a cat burglar, a bellhop, and a maid. And I don't want to say anything more than that, because if I tell you too much, it will spoil the story. Beautiful artwork. The highlight of this book is the artwork, even though it is, you know, only like minimal color. But it was really interesting, although it wasn't that great. I did rate this 3 out of 5 stars. I would recommend reading this if you're into historical kind of stuff. It was kind of fun. It was a fun read, let's say that. After that, I read Amazing Spider-Man Spider-Verse, and this is Volume 3. I've been wanting to read this for a very long time. This is kind of a cataclysmic event where the different Spider-Men from all the different multiverse were introduced, and they had to fight the Inheritors, I think they were called, who basically fed on the essence of the Spider-Man. This was really, really good. I always appreciate reading stories with different incarnations of heroes, so this was kind of cool. I rated this one 4 out of 5 stars. It was a very enjoyable read. If you are a fan of Spider-Man, you should definitely read this one. After that, I read Creatures of the Night by Neil Gaiman. This one, I was thinking, it has great art. I mean, I know a lot of you guys are all about the art, and you think that makes the entirety of a book. While this had great art, it only consisted of 2 short stories. One about a black cat who has a special role in his household, and another one is the daughter of the owl or something like that. It was kind of, it was really meh. It was okay. I found it kind of lacking, though. It was so short, really not much substance, so I only rated this one 2 out of 5 stars. It just wasn't that good. I mean, it's Neil Gaiman. Okay, up next we have the Sandman Dreamhunters. This was a graphic novel. It was kind of based on a poem that Neil Gaiman had written about the Sandman, and it involves a young monk and a fox. It was kind of interesting. I enjoyed it, although I didn't think it was that great. I have to admit, I only rated this 3 out of 5 stars. It's worth picking up. It's not a continuation of the... It's not really a part of the series, so it can be read as a standalone. After that, I read Volume 3, Dream Country. Now, this one was all over the place. One story was about Shakespeare and A Midsummer Night's Dream. Another one was about Calliope, I think is how you pronounce her name. She was a muse, and this author basically buys her. She's like a slave, and she's a literal muse, not like a metaphorically, muse. So he basically, every time he rapes her, he gets another idea for another book. So I thought that was kind of probably, honestly, was probably the best story in this volume. And then there was one about cats and dreams, which is just kind of bad. I didn't really care for that. And, the Shakespeare one I really didn't like either. But there was one that featured the Element Girl, who is a DC Comics superhero, which I was kind of surprised to see her in this, because they kind of like slowly introduced her. And I thought that was a really interesting story. I really enjoyed that. I did rate this one 3 out of 5 stars as well, just because of the 2 stories I just didn't care for. Okay, up next we have the Sandman Seasons of the Mist, Volume 4. This one was really, really good. I've noticed so far I've read so many volumes of the Sandman, and some are either really, really good, some are okay, and so far I've only found one that really kind of sucked. But this one was really good. We meet more of those that are called the Endless, who are the siblings of Morpheus, who is the Dream. And this one takes place mostly in hell, because if you remember from previous volumes, the Sandman had a human lover and she died and she got banished to hell, so his sister kind of reminds him of that, and he feels kind of bad about it and tries to recover her from hell. And this is the story that ties in with the Lucifer books, where Lucifer decides to up and leave hell. I don't want to say too much more because I don't want to spoil it, but this was so very good. I read that one person read this and they were kind of offended about the mythology. They just didn't think it rang true. But Neil Gaiman is a master craftsman, and I really like this. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was really good. Yeah, I kind of skipped and I went from 4 to book 7. I do have 5 and 6, but I'm reading these in order of when they're due back to the library, so I'll have to read 5 and 6 at a later time. But this one is Brief Lives. This one, oh man, this was the one where they're trying to find their brother Destruction, Delirium, and Dream, and mainly this is just a road trip all over the place, and you meet the Sandman's son, Orpheus, which I don't know, maybe he was in earlier volumes, but this was the first time I had seen him. I just thought this one was okay, and I really don't know if because I skipped 5 and 6 that's why I didn't think it was that great, but I only thought this was like a 3 out of 5 star. A lot of people for some reason gave that one 4 or 5 stars too, and I just don't get it because I didn't think it was that great. After that, I read the Sandman Worlds End, and this is volume 8. Now, this takes place at a tavern or inn called the World's End, and it's just basically a bunch of short stories. And to be quite honest with you guys, I really didn't care for these short stories. I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. I just found it to be really just a filler. It lacked any Morpheus, and it just was just short stories, so I wasn't really impressed with that one at all. After that, I picked up Guardians of the Galaxy, and this is one of those like compilation books. I think this is volume 2, but upon opening this and cracking it open, I had discovered I had already read all of this stuff. This is like, I forgot which volumes this entailed, but the main part of this was the trial of Jean Grey, which I liked and I read a while ago. And this has, of course, when Venom joined them too. So I had already read this volume. If you have not read Guardians of the Galaxy, I would probably recommend picking this up because it's like so many volumes in one book. So it kind of saves you time trying to track other books down. This was very good. I mean, I already read all this stuff, but I do say that this is a 4 out of 5 star book. So if you haven't read it yet, go out and get it, check it out. It's worth it. Okay, up next we have Star Wars Dark Times Volume 4. This is Blue Harvest. This takes place just after the Clone Wars and before Star Wars A New Hope. This involves a Jedi named Das Jenner, who I've never heard of, but he's pretty kick-ass. He's somewhat of an average Jedi because he's not an over-the-top, really powerful, or at least that's what his Jedi masters told him as they were training him. Well, he's on this planet, Telrath, I think it's called, and he gets hired by this innkeeper lady who wants him to try to upset and win things in her favor between two rival gangs. So this was really action-packed. It had a lot of different aliens and, of course, a lot of Jedi action. I really enjoyed this, and I rated this one 4 out of 5 stars. If you are a fan of Star Wars, you should definitely check this one out. After that, I read Volume 5 of the same title called Out of the Wilderness. This one had a little more Darth Vader in it, but this involves Jenner and the innkeeper fleeing Telrath, and they're trying to get to another planet, and things don't go as planned. This one was just okay. I didn't feel it was as strong as the previous volume, so I only rated this one 3 out of 5 stars. It was good, but it just wasn't as good as the previous one. After that, I read Uncanny Avengers Axis Prelude. This is Volume 5. And I do have to say, up until this point, I absolutely really liked this series. For some reason, they got a different artist on this. It's not that bad, but it's okay. I mean, it's something I'm sure you would have to get used to. The drawing style kind of does make them look like kids at times. But this picks up from the previous volumes where the Red Skull, of course, he's got his like camps on Genosha, and they're trying to stop him. So it was just okay. It felt really rushed and kind of flat. Like I felt like they didn't really put enough thought into completing this storyline. And then of course there was a filler like Mojo story at the end, which I had to sum this all up. At some point I thought this was going to be a 4-star book. I really enjoyed it. I think this is where I'm going to end my weekend review. I have 2 more books to share with you guys. I, Vampire, Rise of the Vampires, Volume 2. It's been a very long time since I read I, Vampire, Volume 1. I'd have to say it was close to 6 months, maybe almost a year ago. This picks up where that one left off. Of course, the head vampire guy, he had been accidentally killed. And that killing had spawned this Kane guy who was like the ultimate vampire evil or whatever. So he teams up with the Justice League Dark and they get rid of him, but then he creates his vampire community, and yeah, it goes from there. I don't want to say anything more about it because I don't want to spoil it for you guys, but I just thought this was a 3-star book. It was really just okay. I think I had high expectations for it because I thought it would be much better than it was. I don't know if I'm really wanting to read Volume 3. It is what it is, I guess. After that, I read Star Wars Vector Volume 1, and I didn't know what this was until I got it, but basically, Vector is where they take 2 different, comic series, and they're tied together somehow. This one, the first half of this is Knights of the Old Republic Volume 5, and the second half is Dark Times Volume 3. So this is the Dark Times just before the Volume 4 that I had read. And it didn't feature that one Jedi, but it kind of, the old Knights of the Old Republic, they find this old artifact, and they have this, I can't pronounce the name of the plague, but it's this plague that turns people into monsters, and this lady basically sacrifices herself, and she gets resurrected in, the future where Darth Vader is looking for this relic. It was really, really bad. I really couldn't get into this. I usually like Star Wars comics, but this one was pretty bad, and I only rated this one 2 out of 5 stars. So if you have read any of these, or if you plan on reading any of them, let me know down below what you thought of them. And I'm always up for suggestions, recommendations. Thanks for watching. Until next time, later guys.